Good evening, everyone. Welcome to day 36 of the 40 Days of Hope. A message today that God will never abandon you. Your reading yesterday was from John chapter 16, and I'd like to read a little bit about what Jesus said to his disciples there at the end. In the world you will have much trouble, but take hope. I have power over the world. You know, today I've got one of the strongest women and most inspirational women that I know, and you know, it's a real privilege to call her a friend. Fiona Stanton. Her story is ultimately a very sad one. However, she's going to share a real powerful story of a massive miracle that happened for her in all of this. So I just, listen in. It's just a really big faith builder, and my husband Mark is going to join us at the end. Okay, thanks so much for sharing tonight, Fiona.
Hi everybody. Bernie asked me if I would share a bit of my story, particularly in the sense of where it shows how God promised to never leave us alone, even in the midst of some really difficult circumstances. In John's Gospel, Jesus is talking to his disciples and he says, in this world you will have trouble. And if anyone ever tells you that knowing God means that life is smooth and easy, it just simply isn't the case. But what God does say to us is that even when it's not smooth and easy, or even when it is, he's there with us, right beside us, walking the journey with us. And that's certainly been my experience through my life, and in particular during the course of what happened when my husband Mark was really poorly with motor neurone disease. So the particular story that I wanted to talk to you about today was with regard to our house. So Mark first got sick and his arms wouldn't work properly. And we knew that the course of the disease would mean that his legs would also stop working, and at that point he would have to go into a wheelchair. And that left us with a problem because our house just was not suitable in any way for a wheelchair user. So August of 2010, we put our house on the market hoping to be able to sell it and perhaps buy a small bungalow that would work for the needs that he would have. So we looked at a few properties, but the reality was our house just wasn't selling. So I then had our second child, my daughter, and we decided to take the house off the market for a bit and see what would happen. And in the meantime, we looked into whether we could have our house adapted for Mark's needs. It turned out that wasn't possible, and that left us in a bit of a dilemma again. So we decided perhaps we would need to put the house on the market again and try all over from the beginning. And then in December of that year, Mark went to a party with some old football friends of his there, and just as he got chatting to one of the guys, he'd actually won on the national lottery quite a lot of money, and they were looking to upsize their house. So the house that they were selling, he said to Mark, could be adapted for a wheelchair user because someone in his street had done the same thing and it was an identical house. So he said to us, really kindly, this was an amazing offer, he said, we can buy our new house without selling, so we'll hold on to this one and sell it to you when your house has sold, when you're in a position to buy. So we went and had a look around this house, and it's true, it would have served our purpose. It would have had a ground floor bedroom and a wet room that Mark could have used with me, and then he could have had a lift put in to take him up to the middle floor with a kitchen and a sitting room. And then Mark couldn't have accessed it, but there would have been then another floor with another few bedrooms that the children could have had. The outside was a large space, but it was all concreted and at split level. And at this point, our son, who was 2, was already showing signs of being a really good footballer. And the idea of a concrete garden didn't thrill me. But as I say, we really didn't have any options. This was the only possible house we'd come across that could serve what we needed it to be for Mark's purposes. So it seemed like that was the answer, and during this time our church had actually gathered to pray on a regular basis, I think for 40 days, for our situation, and that there would be a breakthrough in some way. So we're seeing this as potentially a real answer to the prayers that people have been praying for us. But something just didn't really sit right in my spirit. So I spent some time just praying and asking God what he wanted to say about the situation. And I felt God really clearly spoke to me through his word from a particular story in the Bible. So you've got Abraham and Sarah, and God has promised them that they will bless all the nations of the earth through their children. So he's promised that they will have a son of their own. And at this point, Sarah's actually getting on towards 100, and she's thinking, there's no way in the world I can have a child. But God very clearly said, no, you will have a son, and through him all the world will be blessed. So they wait, and Sarah still doesn't become pregnant. So in the end, she got so tired of waiting for this event to take place that she suggested to Abraham that he sleep with her maidservant, and he ended up having a son, Ishmael. And history shows how actually there were quite a lot of issues between Ishmael and the son that Abraham and Sarah did end up having. So God had said, actually, it was always meant to be through Sarah that the nations would be blessed. And in the end, Sarah did give birth to a son, and his name was Isaac. So I felt God really speak to me about this and say, okay, you could go ahead and have this house, but really it would be like you trying to make your own plans to solve this problem instead of trusting me that I can solve this problem for you. So he said, go ahead and do this, and it won't be wrong as such, but it's not my best plan for you. I have an Isaac house for you, a best possible option, and something that would really bless you. Will you trust me and hold on for the Isaac house? So I shared this with Mark when he came home from work, and he said, I really feel that that's what God said, and I think we need to take a step of faith and tell my friend that we're not going to buy his house, even though it leaves us with no options, but we need to do this. So he rang up his friend and said, thank you, but sell your house. We're not going to buy it, but we really appreciate your offer. So the next day, he gets a phone call from his friend saying, can we meet for lunch? So he goes and meets this guy for lunch, comes home later in the day and says to me, you're not going to believe what's just happened. And I was like, why? Go on then, what's happened? He said basically his friend had said to him that their business had really flourished, and they had been putting money aside to expand the business, but they'd felt really strongly that expanding the business wasn't the right thing to do, and that God had spoken to them and said that they needed to actually give the money to us to help us with our situation. So I said to Mark, that's incredible, like what are we talking here? It was £280,000. We were absolutely blown away. In fact, I made Mark ring his friend up again and just double check that he had heard him right, because it just seemed too incredible for words. But sure enough, that was exactly what his friend had offered to do. And that same day, we also had some people come and look around our house and put in an offer. And the same day, the house sold. So the day after we'd taken that step of faith and said, we believe God's got a better plan for us, he released incredible amount of money for us to buy a house that would be just wonderful for Mark, space-wise, to be able to move around freely and comfortably in his wheelchair that was coming, with an incredible garden that both of our children have been able to thoroughly enjoy, and it could be adapted for all the purposes that we needed in terms of a wet room and a lift and everything else. And to us, it was just the most incredible story of how God promised that he would be with us even in the most difficult circumstances, and it's continued to be a blessing ever since. In fact, I discovered from a Facebook memory post the other day, it's actually been exactly 10 years since we moved in here, and there's not a day really that goes by when I'm not thankful, that I'm not grateful, that I'm not just feeling so overwhelmed with joy that this house is ours. And we know that it was a gift from God. And in fact, we very quickly had a sign made up for the house, calling it Isaac House, which not only reflected how God had spoken to us from the story of Abraham and Sarah and their son Isaac, but also means house of laughter. And we made the decision there and then that regardless of whatever pain was to come, that our house would always be a house of laughter. So thanks for listening. I hope that's encouraged you in some way to know that even if you're going through something really, really hard, and where there doesn't seem to be any answer, just look to God, because he is with you in the midst of it all. Thank you.
So what an incredible story that is from Fiona there. And I just want to kind of honour Fiona and Mark and the family for actually not abandoning God, because the story is that hope that God will not abandon us, but actually through all this pain and suffering they went through as a family, as Mark suffered with his motor neurons disease and eventually ended up sadly passing away. Fiona and Mark never faltered really. They showed such joy in the midst of the suffering. So I just want to honour them and just think that, like, I just remember the story so vividly, and actually, although Mark has passed away, we still talk about him now, and just the laughter and fun we had in that house. Like Fiona said, it's the house of laughter. We had such a great time in there. Week in, week out, we would turn up and be with Mark and Fiona and the family, and just have a cracking time. It was fantastic. And so just well done to Fiona. You're brilliant at bringing up your children by yourself now. And yeah, you've got just a fantastic testimony of how much God has been with you, and also just how much you actually rely on him and show so much love for him. So
Thanks guys. Okay, enjoy your reading.